Mike and I are always talking about people. When they start going metaphorical on how you can have group intention,
I think you
and
really
sort of
will.
group.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It does say something about intention. It didn't make me realize that from
I have to leave early, so I got here early to be able to speak out.
I would
Jerry, Lonnie, you may want to be closer. She'd love to see you closer. You may not want to be back behind a Verity. Students never want to sit up front anyway.
Well, they enlarged the view so they can see this.
Oh, is that all they did? Everything's good and the live stream starts.
And it's not, we're not.
The live stream is recording, so Krista's the only one. Krista's the only one that has access, so she can edit like this part and do all that.
So it's all housed here. It's not accessible to anybody.
No, Krista has it locked down. So yeah, unless you tell Krista to do something with it, she's the only.
10 seconds.
Well, let me just not word for
10 seconds.
That's right. Yeah, look at the delay.
The only one that really has access to it. You know, she sets it all up and it goes. I've never. Once we do the live stream side, she does whatever after the recording goes in place. Where only her accounts will see it.
So we'll step up on our turn. Is that?
Yeah, that's fine. We decided to sit there rather than there.
It is kind of weird. It is weird. Yeah, people staring at the side of your head.
Yeah.
Vic used to stare at his phone, so on the live stream, people are like, "What is the thing
My
doing?"
attention span is just long enough.
You can make it.
It'll be hard.
It's hard. I agree.
You know if we have, I'm assuming the answer is no. We don't have anything that like pops up notes.
Like an easel?
Yeah, something small. We don't.
No, that's a step stool. Let me see here.
I wonder if, even if like I had a book or something.
Yes, I'll go get one for you. Do you have a minute?
We start in 1 minute. I could muddle through.
All right. Well, I'll bring something down here. What I have is like a laptop stand that adjusts up and
Yeah,
down.
that's a good thing.
You don't want to wait?
No. Well,
I have 12 minutes right now.
yeah, I'm waiting for Stanley's to arrive, so I'm not going to start till they're done.
Okay.
So,
I wonder if I should go wait for that. You know where they're going.
yeah, maybe. Because you know Gabriele, right?
Yep.
Okay, so, yeah. No, there he is. There he is.
Oh, okay. They're like, no, I don't want to sit up front.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the investiture of Professor Verity Winship as the Edwin M. Adams Professor of Law. Investitures are a longstanding tradition in the Academy to acknowledge and honor faculty members who have shown exemplary achievement in their scholarship, teaching, and public engagement. It's wonderful to see so many friends, colleagues, and students here to celebrate with Professor Winship on this significant occasion. I'd like to make a special mention of Professor Winship's family joining us today. Her husband, Professor Gabriele Lanave, a professor in the mathematics department, I would add, and their two children, Noah and Sophie. I will take a point of personal privilege to say Noah is also my son's math tutor. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you. Marion Nelson and Peter Winship, Verity's parents, are also with us today watching on the live stream. Hello. In addition to celebrating our honorees and their families and friends, investitures provide an opportunity to honor our supporters, those whose vision and generosity help us to recruit, retain, and reward some of the nation's finest scholars and teachers. Today's endowed position, the Edwin M. Adams Professorship, is made possible by a generous gift from the late Edwin M. Adams, a well-known lawyer and actor who earned his degree from this law school in 1939. Mr. Adams had several careers. He led a very interesting life. He spent his first illustrious career with the U.S. Foreign Service for 26 years, advising ambassadors and presidents, tracking down Nazi assets, and negotiating peace treaties. You know, just another day that ends in Y. His second career began shortly after his retirement from the Foreign Service in 1968 and was based in Hollywood, where he appeared in 24 movies, including 3 Days of the Condor, Airport 75, Suspect, and The Last Detail. In his third and final act, Mr. Adams became an accomplished author, penning his autobiography, a wide variety of poetry, and a fiction book. Although Mr. Adams is no longer with us, his legacy continues through his commitment to building and sustaining a faculty cohort here at the college that leads legal scholarship, and we are grateful for his generosity. We're also delighted to be joined today by a distinguished campus leader, Dr. Ami Santos, Associate Provost for Faculty Development and Professor in the College of Education. Dr. Santos is a leading authority on how families and cultures influence the development of young children with disabilities. In her role at the Provost's office, Dr. Santos provides leadership on faculty development and success, including faculty mentoring, support for pre-tenure and mid-career faculty, career paths for specialized faculty, and leadership development. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Santos to the podium.
Good afternoon. I'm back. Thank you, Dean Sharp. So this feels weird. Sorry, I'm going to move here. Okay, I'm honored to join you today to celebrate our colleague, Verity Winship, as the Edwin M. Adams Professor of Law. It's a pleasure to recognize not only a remarkable scholar, but also someone who's a generous teacher and an outstanding colleague. I got to know Verity when she was a fellow for our Big Ten Academic Leadership Program. So on behalf of Provost Coleman, congratulations, Professor Winship, on this well-deserved recognition. It is a privilege to acknowledge distinguished members of our Illinois faculty when they are invested into an endowed professorship. In fact, of all the university events in which I am invited to participate, investitures of colleagues with an endowed professorship easily ranks among my most enjoyable experiences. And that's because these ceremonies serve as our most public opportunity to recognize excellence among our academic family here at Illinois. It's also important to remember what a distinction it is to earn such an honor at a university like ours. Excellence is the norm at Illinois, so today marks a truly significant milestone for Professor Winship. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the generosity of our donor, the late Edwin M. Adams. Although Mr. Adams is no longer with us, his financial support continues to benefit our mission and scholarly endeavors. So, as a university, we rely on that kind of generosity and foresight to strengthen our already world class resources for scholarship, teaching, and public engagement. Gifts like the one we're celebrating today are direct and literal investments in people and ideas. They afford us a critical edge when it comes to ensuring that some of the most accomplished scholars on our campus, scholars such as Professor Winship, continue to call Illinois home for many more years to come. They also act as a loud and clear reminder to our peers that Illinois is a place where hard work and scholarly achievement are championed. Now, these endowments get to the very heart of what a university like ours should be and should do. They also provide the autonomy and resources for ambitious projects, enabling faculty to take risks, to pursue bold ideas, and to foster interdisciplinary collaborations. In short, they encourage a big think mindset. So during these special investiture celebrations, we're also reminded of the shared value that define us as a university. So as a public institution, Illinois has a responsibility to serve not only our state, but our nation and the world. Our faculty also have a special responsibility to engage in scholarship that addresses important societal issues. You couldn't ask for a better example of that than Professor Winship, whose research on the complexities of business law have shaped conversations far beyond our campus. The very distinction we're celebrating today, a named appointment, is one of the most significant accomplishments in an academic career. It is the highest honor we bestow on our faculty, one we reserve for those who have excelled in our most fundamental university missions of research, teaching, and public engagement. Professor Winship, your work exemplifies the very best of Illinois. Congratulations once again on this well-deserved achievement. Thank you, and now I'd like to invite Dean Sharp back to the platform.
Now, let us turn to our honoree. I've had the privilege of working with Professor Winship her entire career here at the College of Law when she joined us as an assistant professor. We've worked closely since then, particularly when she served as the college's senior associate dean for academic affairs during the first year of my deanship, where she was enormously helpful in ensuring a smooth leadership transition here at the college. Were I to list all of the ways that Professor Winship has been a pillar of the college community, we'd be here all day. So instead, let me give you some highlights that convey how much her creativity, wisdom, commitment, and intelligence have meant to us. Professor Winship has held multiple leadership positions here at the university and in the broader legal academy. She served as interim dean of the college and, as I said, senior associate dean for academic affairs. Outside of the law school, she served as a fellow of the Big Ten Academic Alliance Academic Leadership Program and chaired the Securities Regulations section of the American Association of Law Schools. Professor Winship actively promotes business law scholarship and provides engagement opportunities for both researchers and students alike. She co-founded and co-organizes the Corporate and Securities Litigation Workshop, an annual conference running more than a decade that connects national and international scholars working in corporate and securities law. She also directs the college's business law program, which serves as a hub for fostering groundbreaking scholarship and hosting enriching events that connect students, scholars, faculty, alum, and business leaders from across the country. And as wonderful as all of these contributions are, and they are worthy of celebration in and of themselves, that is not why we are all here today. Rather, we are here to celebrate Professor Winship's amazing accomplishments as a researcher and as a scholar. I would have to concur with the sentiments expressed by our own colleague, Professor Jennifer Robinault, who collaborated with Professor Winship on award-winning empirical work on the settlement of legal disputes. Quote, Verity is a gifted scholar whose insights and analyses consistently push our work forward. Complementing her keen intellect, she is an extraordinary collaborator, bringing energy, creativity, and clarity to every discussion. I particularly appreciate her talent for framing complex ideas in ways that are simultaneously insightful, rigorous, and accessible. Working with her is intellectually stimulating, deeply rewarding, and always a privilege, end quote. Professor Winship joined the University of Illinois College of Law in 2010, having previously taught at Fordham and Cardozo Law Schools. She is one of the nation's leading experts in business law and complex litigation. Her research focuses on corporate litigation, securities enforcement, and disputes that cross legal systems. Her articles have appeared in such journals as the Vanderbilt Law Review, Boston University Law Review, the Journal of Empirical Legal Studies, the Delaware Journal of Corporate Law, and the Stanford Journal of Complex Litigation. She co-edited the Research Handbook on Representative Shareholder Litigation, has been a consistent contributor to Jotwell, as well as a frequent commentator on Illinois Public Radio's Legal Issues in the News when the program regularly aired. Professor Winship has, not once, but twice, been awarded the Carol P. Hurd Award for Excellence in Faculty Scholarship. Her work has also been selected for the Mangiano Dispute Resolution Advancement Award with our colleague, Professor Jennifer Robinault, and the Hugh L. Carey Center's Dispute Resolution Advancement Award with Professor Robinault and Jessica Bregan. Professor Winship is the recipient of multiple grants, including as a co-principal investigator on the National Science Foundation Rapid Grant. Professor Winship is an honors graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Law School, where she served as executive editor of the Harvard Law Review. After graduating, she clerked for Lewis A. Kaplan in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, and for Judge Marjorie O. Rendell in the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Before entering the academy, she practiced in the areas of securities enforcement and litigation at WilmerHale in New York City, and is a member of the New York Bar. Without any further ado, Professor Winship, please come up so that I may honor you with this medallion marking your investiture as the Edwin M. Adams Professor of Law.
Thank you.
The podium is yours.
So thank you for the kind introduction. I think I underestimated how much I'd be thrown by the kind words, and also by wearing a medallion, which is not an everyday event and which is heavier and more sturdy than the Olympic or the medallions. I'm going to lower this so I can see you. Sometimes we think of professors and scholars as working alone in their offices with their scholarship or in the library doing research. But I've come to see it as a collaboration with co-authors and colleagues, with research assistants, past and present, TAs, students, with staff and administrators. And I've also been lucky enough to work with some terrific law deans. Thank you, Dean Sharp, most recently. And I've learned from all of you, and I'm very, very grateful. I could not do any of this without my family. My husband and son and daughter are here, and more family may be watching remotely. I think that's looking straight into the camera, if you see me looking over there. Welcome, and thank you. So with those thanks as a framework, I want to show you one picture. This is a worksheet that my daughter did in elementary school. And you can see it asks the students to describe something that someone in your family does. And it's a drawing of me at a desk or a table with maybe with a pencil or a pen, a very good likeness. And it says, my mom works and works, spelled W-R-C-S, okay. My daughter is older now, and her spelling has improved a little bit. But I keep this in my office. And in part, it's about one of the great pleasures of this job, which is that your work is visible to your family. It's alongside your family. But the message is also a little bit complicated, and maybe it's also a complaint. It did go to the teachers who may have their own opinions about this. And so, like the experience of parenting and having a full-time job, it has its nuances. But I thought I'd share it today because this event is, in some ways, the culmination of my mom works and works. So I will come back around to Edwin M. Adams at the end. You may have heard of a compliment sandwich. So you have a compliment at the beginning and the end, and then in between you have the slightly less digestible stuff. And I am going to do that, but with thank yous. And so beginning and end of thank yous, and in between some remarks. Thank you sandwich. All right. You may or may not know that business schools and law schools have different cultures, okay? And I was at a business school event a while back, about a year or so ago, and there were business school professors, there were entrepreneurs, there were business students, and it was a really great event. And it was set up to start with networking. And at some point, the organizer gathered the crowd around the speaker in a kind of circle. And one of the things the speaker did was ask a question. And the question was, what is your why? W-H-Y. What is your why? So I did what I suspect many people trained in law school culture did or would do, which is avoid eye contact and make sure I was in the middle of the crowd, okay? Because in law school, what we call that is cold calling. And I know I see a number of students here. You may have had a moment where you were worried that I was gonna ask you, what is your why, okay? So we're not used to asking or answering that question in law school. What is your why? And with law school ears, it almost sounds like a slogan, or this type of call and response may seem a little gimmicky, but I've thought about it a lot since then. And one thing, it is always good to be on the other side of cold calling. It builds empathy and reminds you of how it feels. But I also came to think of this as being the question, and we do ourselves a disservice if we're not asking that of ourselves, and frankly, also thinking of the ability to answer that question sincerely as an important part of what students are doing, in part in thinking about their professional identities, but also in thinking about what they're doing in their lives and how this fits into what they're doing. So I also think it's very nice to have a one-sentence answer to that. And it would definitely get us to the reception and snacks and chatting much sooner. But what I want to give you today is a law professor version. And one that is in keeping with the tradition in this type of event of talking a little bit about one's own scholarship and the trajectory of work. And so I think of this middle part of the talk as the why of business law. The 3 reasons that business law has kept my attention, and some of the reasons that I think you should be interested in it. And so before I get to why, I probably have to say something about what. Business law is an umbrella term. It really is a collection of different topics about how we organize the economy and economic activity. It means that we have a large and accomplished business law faculty at the law school, especially when you define this broadly. My corner of it is this, as Dean Sharp referred to this as well. Most of my scholarship in business law has been about the accountability of business and financial activity through mechanisms outside the corporation. So especially litigation and in government enforcement. So you can describe it in slightly different ways, but corporate and securities litigation and enforcement, or one part of this is the civil side of white-collar enforcement. That's the what. Here's the why. So I put money first, not because that's the most important thing to me, but because it's my usual response to when people seem, in my opinion, insufficiently interested in business law. Business law defines the shapes of productive activity. It's organized into various legal forms, entities like corporations, LLCs, various partnerships. Money and power in our society is organized through business law. So how could you not be interested? Who gets that money is a natural follow-up. And it has all sorts of wide-ranging and not all good consequences. So we should care about the business structures that allocate this. And we should also care about being literate and numerate and see the stakes of things, even when it's through this topic that may sometimes seem technical or may involve financial statements or numbers or math, let's call it. So I'll give you one example where this plays out. So I've put up on the slide a set of some of the largest US companies. And they're comparable in size on a number of dimensions, but there's a fundamental distinction between two groupings on this slide. So here, that is a VIP rope, okay? It is marking a distinction that's built into US securities law. And it's a long-standing division between private and public markets. And so traditionally, one of these, the public market, is open to ordinary investors. The other one is closed. Traditionally, there's a whole apparatus in the public area that is built up since the 1930s and that is designed for investor protection. The other is much more buyer beware, okay? And I've put the ticker symbols up for the public companies here. This, we could trade in them right now. This is not an invitation to get out your phone and get on Robinhood, and it's not investment advice, but it is accessible in that way, right? And this creates, this was fine until about the last decade or so, when the private markets grew to be big or bigger than the public ones. And so you probably recognize, actually, you may recognize the names of the private companies as well as you recognize the public ones. And I've left off some of the biggest, the OpenAIs, et cetera. Okay, this creates a lot of pressure, and it gives rise to a genuine question about access. Is giving retail investors, so your sort of ordinary investors, individual investors, access to private markets a matter of democratizing access? Or is giving retail investors access to private markets really all about giving these private markets and companies access to retail investors, so the vice versa, and their money? And when I say access to private markets, who gets to go beyond that VIP rope? Some of my current work is about this and the consequences for wealth distribution. And so I have a current piece about litigating the accredited investor definition. It sounds technical, but that definition is all about who gets beyond that VIP rope. Okay? And I'm working on another co-authored piece about other means of investing in the private markets. So creating tokens that stand in for those companies that are behind the VIP rope. And so tokenization of private company equity may not sound really great to you, but it's all about access. It's a fun and cross-border and sort of odd aspect of our current lives. So these I think of as open and important questions about wealth and investor protection and what we want our society to look like. Here's my second why of business law. And that is the interaction between public and private actors. Both public and private actors I have up here, and also tools or mechanisms as well. And so this has held my attention over the years, in part because I think it's very characteristic of the US. US is not completely comfortable with having things entirely in the public or government sector, and so you often see some mix or some push and pull, or things growing up on both sides. And so I want to give you a few examples. The first is just shared enforcement of the law. So I promised this to a couple of securities nerds in the audience. This is my and on at the podium. This is the securities fraud piece of the statute. It's one of the major pieces. You could go through a whole securities course and only read this, and then lots of cases. But it's also the basis for insider trading prohibitions in the U.S. And if you are doing a scan here, you're not going to see that anywhere. But it's been interpreted that way as well. One of its characteristics is that both public and private actors enforce it. So they're both brought in to this anti-fraud actions in our systems. And you can think of it, this is just sort of the example. You have mostly the SEC, DOJ is there. I've given one international example as well, because a lot of places have the equivalent, these sort of civil enforcers. And then on the private litigation side, I have a somewhat disorganized crowd there, but it's really standing in for class actions, which are driving this on the private side. And so one of the things, I see a couple of my CivPro students out in the audience, wouldn't be complete without some sort of Venn diagram. And so here's my private litigation and securities enforcement overlap. Not to scale, but one of the things that's interesting about this is that you can take the temperature of what we're doing and what we want to do in our markets, in our economy, by the relation between these two. You can have one really shrink and one grow. You could have both small. We have a sort of temperature taking through seeing the changes in this particular relationship. So. One of the things that has kept my interest is that you have to think about both sides. You have to think about things on the public and the governmental side. So you're thinking about agencies and administrative law. And so this is just an example. This is from a paper I did a number of years back, where the SEC, it's on the government side, and the SEC, when it resolves an action, an enforcement action, put out a notice, describing it, and at the very end, there's a thank you note. And it says, we thank the U.S. postal inspectors and something else, and the, Denver police. And they're very, so this is a picture of who did they thank in a particular period. To think of agencies, so you get the chance to dig in a little bit into what's an agency and are they acting alone? How does a network of agencies look? So that's just an example on the public side. The other thing I'll say is that when you are thinking about any issue, so even you can think back to the VIP rope and that issue about access, how much do we want, what do we want it to look like? Anytime you're thinking about an issue, you have to think in this area both about the public side and the private side. And so this is just an example of companion pieces where I looked at what the SEC was doing about the companies behind the velvet rope and what the private litigants in the unicorn shareholder suits were doing about the companies behind the velvet rope. And you really need to look at both of them together and to have the full picture. Okay. The other example, that's really about the actors. I'll just say one word about the tools or the mechanisms, the private and public tools and mechanisms. This is something that struck me really early in practice. So years ago, when I was in practice doing securities enforcement on the defense side, one of the things you quickly notice is that it's very different than what you look at in law school. You aren't reading cases. Most of the time what we were doing is either internal investigations, which is its own category, but also thinking about settlement. And what are those terms in those settlements? Are they tracking the statute? What are they doing? Are they innovative? Are they tough? And so we're already on notice that you have this overlay of what's essentially a bargain in the context of something that's very public. And so when I think of the tools, this overlap between public and private, when we think of mechanisms or tools, one of the places that I see that is in this settlement area. And this, Dean Sharp mentioned this as well, this is part of the origin story for some of my work on settlements, both in the SEC context, but then more recently moving into a broader look at settlements with my co-author. All right. Here's the third why. Characters. So there are always crazy and wildly ambitious characters involved, particularly when things go wrong. And sometimes they are con artists. This is, you can see a bit of a rogues gallery on the slide. Extra points if you can remember which scandal the sad sandwich picture refers to. You can tell me in the reception. I know at least one of you should remember this. I will say I've lost my taste a little bit for the con artist or snake oil salesman aspect of this recently. And I did think about substituting creativity for my third, like, oh, creativity, very positive, last category. But because I do think that that is one of the parts that I want students to recognize, that there's a huge space for creativity and building something in business law. But, okay, so I stuck with characters. That's true to myself. And I'm a little bit over the con artists, although I am working on a co-authored piece about Sam Bankman-Fried and his apology tour after the collapse of FTX. So maybe I've not completely lost my taste for him. Okay, putting aside the rogues gallery, I have definitely not lost my taste for characters more generally. And so I want to close out by saying a couple of things in appreciation of our benefactor and alumnus, Edwin M. Adams. And so if you read the program to the end, you saw that the biography, and you heard a little bit from Dean Sharp already. I was struck by the number of parts of this biography that resonate personally with my own family and family history. So State Department, Navy, lived in Rome, an African connection. I was both curious and grateful, so I decided to spend a bit of time in the archives. And Edwin M. Adams was a 1939 alum of the law school. And the slide shows the law school at the time, now Altgeld, the math building. But this was the law building. And it's a little bit difficult to imagine 1939. You have wartime, you have depression. But one of the documents in his archives is the autobiography. And to give you a sense of it, the autobiography opens with a phone call from Gloria Swanson, very famous actress who appeared in Sunset Boulevard. And what does she say? Laurence Olivier couldn't make it to a film retrospective of Swanson's work, so would our Ed, escort her. Needless to say, this is a long way away from beginnings in central Illinois in what he called land as flat as a table, where he had a country doctor for a father and a mother who taught math and English in the local school. It's also a long way from law school, which does not feature at length in the autobiography, although maybe we can say it enabled many of the adventures that you can read about. Here's what he had to say about it. Quote, I can say with no equivocation that I worked harder during those 3 years in law school than I ever worked again in my life. Law school was difficult for me. I was not a brilliant student, but I got along all right. I passed the bar examination in the state of Illinois in my first attempt, which I thought was rather an achievement. I had wonderful friends in law school who enlarged my knowledge, who increased my development, who helped me, and I hope I helped them. In his third year in law school, he almost went to Hollywood. He was actually invited for screen tests, but could not trade being a lawyer for the improbable possibility of a Hollywood contract. So instead, after law school, he started in the legal department at State Farm for $125 a month. And he felt lucky about it. Remember, this is 1939, jobs were few, but it did not suit him, as you might guess from his later exploits. Did not suit him, and he was soon off to the State Department. And here, it really fits into what Dean Sharp was describing. He went to the State Department and had a series of jobs. He was then in the Navy. He was the legal attaché to the Allied Commission, uncovering Nazi assets hidden in Swiss bank accounts, counselor to the U.S. Embassy in Rome, Bureau of African Affairs, Associate Dean of the Foreign Service Institute, and then finally, again, to Hollywood. And I suspect these are headshots for the series of clergy and congressmen that he played in later movies, but I'm not sure. If you dip into the autobiography, you will find phrases like this about his time in Rome when commenting on overlapping lives of artistic endeavor and life of decadence. He writes, quote, "This was made apparent in a splendid film by my next-door neighbor, Federico Fellini," unquote. I'm going to skip the part about his friendship with Charlton Heston and making friends across political divides, although we can talk separately later. But you also find, if you pop into the archives, you find a telegram where he's writing to Paul Newman and saying, "I have the perfect role for you," because he's written these scripts. "I have this perfect role for you." And here's the typed rejection letter from Paul Newman. Signed. There are also signs of persistence over his career, and not just this return to the Hollywood dream many years later. In the archives, there's a letter from Edwin Adams from 2001. He says, roughly, I'm paraphrasing, "I submitted a script to you 25 years ago, and you said positive things about it." I think this is to an agent, I'm not sure. And he explains that the script was about a female presidential candidate. And elsewhere in the files, you can see that he's proposed Angela Lansbury to play this role, okay? And so the letter reminds the agent or the recipient of the enthusiasm that they had at the time, 25 years prior, and points out that times had changed and maybe it was time to accept this script. So we can all learn from that. Now, I say this, all of this with gratitude that our paths have intersected. Openness to unexpected turns and appreciation that milestones like this investiture push us to think about the why in what we do. So thank you.
So, Professor Winship, thank you so much. Congratulations. We look forward to all of your future scholarly and anecdotal entertaining contributions to enrich our wonderful community here. It's been a true pleasure to be your colleague over these, I won't say how many years, but several years. So thank you and congratulations to you and to your wonderful family. We can now break. Professor Winship has given us a significant amount of time for interaction and snacking in the pavilion. So I invite everybody to express your personal congratulations, Professor Winship, in our reception in the pavilion. Thank you to everybody for attending. Thank you.